This isn't just cruel. Sending them to this hellhole in El Salvador was cruel and unusual. This is monstrous. Absolutely monstrous. There are credible news reports. They're not, I haven't investigated myself, but I believe the news reports are credible that the Trump administration was at least considering sending undocumented immigrants, do you know where, Sam? To the two of the most horrific places you can imagine.
Libya and Ukraine.
Ukraine. Can you imagine sending people to a war zone? And these aren't Ukrainians. These are, whatever immigrants you detain. Sending people to a war zone.
I believe they were mostly Eastern European and Caucasus immigrants.
But they weren't Ukrainians.
They weren't Ukrainians.
Yeah,
no.
Exactly. A war zone where people are being routinely killed and maimed, and services are down, and power is dubious, and there are no facilities for housing immigrants. This isn't just cruel. Sending them to this hellhole in El Salvador was cruel and unusual. This is monstrous, absolutely monstrous, and maybe not quite as bad, but almost as bad as you can get sending people to Libya. As you know, Sam, our State Department has travel warnings.
Right.
And you know what the highest level of travel warnings are in the State Department?
Red?
Level 4.
Oh, 4. Okay.
And Libya is level 4.
Yikes.
Quote, do not travel to Libya.
Okay.
Do not travel to Libya. That's a direct quote from the State Department. Quote, due to crime, terrorism, unexploded landmines, civil unrest, kidnapping, and armed conflict.
Look, Trump and his administration couldn't be as night and day to this progressive Catholic movement who are promoting, helping poor people, helping immigrants. I mean, Trump is literally like, if you're rich, you can buy your way into America. If you're poor and undocumented, we're not only going to kick you out, we're going to send you to like some of the most dangerous countries on earth. Couldn't be a sharper contrast.
As I said, it's not just cruel, it is monstrous. Absolutely monstrous. I've been around a long time, and I never in my wildest dreams could have imagined any president of any political party, of any ideological persuasion, resorting to this kind of monstrous policies. But, I do believe for this administration, in my opinion, they find some logic in this, because what they're trying to do is use the stick and the carrot to get undocumented immigrants to self-deportate. That's, their term. So they don't have to bother rounding them up and sending them anywhere. This is the stick. Hey, if you don't get out of here, you could wind up in Libya or Ukraine or God knows where, Sudan, Rwanda, anywhere. And, of course, they have the carrot, which is, barely a baby carrot, and we'll pay you $1,000.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we're going to pay you $1,000 if you self-deport. How long is $1,000 going to last a family anywhere?
Where are all these tax cuts going to come from if they're going to spend all this money paying all these countries to take these immigrants, give them all $1,000? That seems like a lot of spending to me.
It's a hell of a lot of spending. And not to mention, although it's a small potatoes, there's going to be many tens of millions of dollars spending on Trump's golf trips.
Well,
but we're not going to talk about that. And we're not going to talk about, the billions of dollars that Trump and his family are raking in from his presidency. There's plenty of reporting on that in the news. But, we talked about this before. They want to cut $150 billion while they're spending more in the military and, God knows how much on these deportation efforts. You can't do it without cutting what program, Sam?
Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
Right. You can't cut the debt servicing. That's fixed. They're increasing the military. They're increasing ICE. And very hard to go after Social Security and Medicare because that's old people. And what do old people do, Sam? We vote.
Right.
The highest turnout group are old people. So who do you go after?
I didn't know where you're going with that. What do old people do? I was like, my brain was like,
I don't blame you, but we vote.
Right.
So go after the vulnerable. Go after the poor and the near poor, the many tens of millions of dollars that go to Medicaid from the government and that tens of millions of people are dependent upon. And we'll have no other source for medical care. No other source. People will die. They will be sick. They will be unable to treat their wounds and their accidents. It's, again, not just cruel, it is monstrous to contemplate this. To what end? To give big tax cuts that mostly, not entirely, but mostly go to people who don't need it. You know, Trump calls himself a populist. This is populism turned absolutely upside down, violated in every possible way. But the idea of sending people to Ukraine and Libya, as I said, the only word for it is monstrous.